We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hammond, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
That is right, everybody. You are listening to Dr. J Radio Live. I am your humble host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels, where it happens to be 7 p.m. in the Pacific Time. We are broadcasting coast to coast in the United States, where on the East Coast it happens to be 10 p.m. Eastern Time. But it doesn't stop there. Cross that Atlantic pond where you reach the other studio in London, England, in the United Kingdom, where my good friend and co-host happens to be Johnny Webb, where it is 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. As always, we have a super special show for you today, and it's not just someone that I've been watching for more than 2 decades, and for some reason, I had the number 1991 in my head, but I was just confirmed that it was actually 1990. So that shows 26 years that I've been paying attention to this gentleman, and he's been a guest once, and another time, this is how I found him. He actually called in when we had a guest. I don't want to spoil it too much. When he called in to back up a guest, which I thought was really cool. I'm like, I gotta call him after, and I gotta book him, and boom, it flourishes then. Now, I hope with those details, you've already gone through all the social media websites or accounts to check it out, because remember, everything is the same name as the show, Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. Everything from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Google+, Gmail, Pinterest, Slack, especially YouTube, and like I said, our domain. And all those places you're going to see one name for tonight. And that happens to be a very famous name, Norio Hayakawa. Mr. Hayakawa, welcome back, my friend. It's always a pleasure to speak to you on air or off air, and I think it was just really fabulous how we got you in here, how I even found you, because you had been on my list, literally, of people to talk to from, 1991, what I thought, and until you corrected me. So let's actually go back to even before 1990. What brought your interest into the paranormal, specifically about extraterrestrials, or let's just take it one step further, possible extraterrestrial craft that were allegedly seen at Area 51, where you did a lot of your research in the early 90s?
Well, actually, it goes way, way beyond. In fact, it goes to about 1955 or even 1954, when I was just fourth or fifth grader at an elementary school in Yokohama, Japan, where I grew up. And at that time, as a innocent grade schooler, I used to listen to my father's amazing account of how he, one night in 1947, in the summer of 1947, as he was fishing in the Bay of Yokohama around 2 a.m. in the morning, he suddenly saw a strange greenish ball of fire just maneuvering over the Bay of Yokohama at around 2 a.m., as I mentioned. And he had been fishing, night fishing, for many, many years, and he knew the sky. He knew astronomy. He had seen, hundreds and hundreds of natural phenomena, you name it, comets, all kinds of things, planets, you name it. He knew all the stars, but never in his life, until that summer in 1947, had he seen something so strange that he watched while he was fishing, and he used to tell me about his experience at the dinner table quite frequently as I was growing up. And even though my mother was kind of skeptical about it, my father sincerely believed in what he saw, and he described it as a greenish ball of fire, and it was around 1947. And that's how I kind of grew up in that kind of background, in that kind of upbringing, and so I definitely had a great interest in flying saucers, the term which was used around that time. So when I was in high school in 1961, I really started in serious to research about this whole phenomenon. So that was in 1961, and from there on, it's a long story, but filled with adventures and filled with all kinds of interesting incidents and meeting a lot of interesting people and so on. And in 1965, I came to the state of New Mexico, where I now reside. And in 1964, yes, the reason why I came to New Mexico in 1965 is perhaps something told me to come to New Mexico, because the year before, 1964, I was impressed by a newspaper article that appeared in Japan that described a patrol officer in a tiny town of Socorro, New Mexico, who witnessed an astonishing scene.
Lottie Zamora, right?
Lottie Zamora, that's right. That changed my whole life, and thus I became actually a fanatic about flying saucers and then UFOs. The term UFOs came out later, but then I joined groups like NICAP and all other kinds of organizations, and used to subscribe to their newsletters, so I've gone through all kinds of things. And in 1978, while I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, I got hung up on the writings of Dr. Jacques Vallée and Dr. John A. Keel, which really changed my whole outlook on this phenomena. So since around 1978, I began to accept the alternative explanations for this strange phenomena, the UFO phenomenon. And in 1988, I began to receive some interesting information from several people, and that was in 1988. One of those people was William L. Moore.
Ah, yes.
Yes, he sent me a satellite photo, Russian satellite photo of Area 51 in Nevada, and I had no idea what Area 51 was until I received that information from William Moore in 1988. And at the same time, I had a person that I come to be acquainted, and that was the Tal Levesque, also known as Jason Bishop. He apparently was an acquaintance of John Lear in 1988, and that's the same year, which I think it was very important. 1988 was a crucial year for the outbreak of pre-Bob Lazar outbreak of Area 51. In fact, Area 51 did not become a household name until 1989, when Bob Lazar appeared on a radio program. But what we're talking here about 1988, 2 years before then. And strangely enough, in 1988, I was fascinated by a Fox TV, a national special called UFO Cover-Up Live, and which was an amazing 2-hour live documentary type program broadcast nationwide. And in that program, the mysterious Area 51 was mentioned for about 5 minutes in the entire 2-hour program. And so, Dr. John, contrary to a lot of people who think that everything started in 1989 with Bob Lazar, actually it started in 1988 when there was rumblings among a few researchers that there's a place called Area 51 in Nevada, and that's how I got involved in it.
And you happen to actually be one of the first, because like you said, it wasn't until post Bob Lazar that there were video games created. You know, Area 51 was the basis for the movie Independence Day. Like you said, it was a worldwide household name. But I remember going through the entire 80s not hearing a peep about this giant base, Air Force base, or run by private military contractors or deltas. Well, all these descriptions that were told until Bob Lazar. So you were there actually before. Let me ask you this. Did you happen to, because you've had several excursions to Area 51 before they annexed more federal land, so to make it so where you can't see into the base over
That's right.
The ridge.
That's right.
Did you capture anything on film or just see anything?
Well, yeah, well, I saw the whole facility from a viewable distance. I would say it was about 5 or 6 miles, but you can see the buildings clearly because we were on top of Whitesides Hill. And also, that was, by the way, in 1993 or 1994. And at that time, Area 51 was viewable if you climb up this small hill. And later on, in 1994, I climbed the what's known as Freedom Ridge and saw that facility again. So I did take some film footages, and a friend of mine, Anthony J. Hilder, he also took some excellent video footage of that place. So I know what that place looks like, and to me, it's a very important facility. And over the years, after visiting that perimeter area for many, many years, taking various roads and dirt roads around that whole area, I became, like a fanatic about that location. And I'm not saying I was one of the pioneers, but I knew a friend whose name was Gary Schultz, and Gary Schultz and I used to take people, in the early 1990s to that area, climbing those hills and having, chased by the security guards and so on. And those were memorable years. But over the years, I came to the conclusion that despite the importance of Area 51, it is very, very, very difficult to get down to the bottom of this thing. In other words, we have no idea what the real ultimate truth about Area 51 is, but I became convinced that there's something that it's part of a conditioning system of our belief system orchestrated by some force ever since 1947 that has been slowly, gradually conditioning us to, or sensitizing us to the Area 51 alien connection. And I'm saying the same thing with another location in New Mexico, also called Dulce, New Mexico, which I've been examining since 1988 also. So in 1988, two very important subject matters sprung up, namely Area 51 and Dulce, New Mexico. In fact, I was very surprised in 1988 that there was an area called Dulce in the state of New Mexico. And so contrary to a lot of people's opinion, Dulce had actually a longer history than Area 51.
That's right, pre-47. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because you wrote the forward or the preface for Anthony Sanchez's UFO Highway, which is, you brought it up. I'm glad you did because that is something I definitely want to ask you about. But real quick, we got some chatter coming from across the Atlantic pond. Johnny Webb, what you got for Norio?
Hey, Dr. J. Yeah, I've got a quick question here on Facebook by Gary in London, England, Clapham, in fact. He's asking, do you know what happened to the family that wouldn't sell their land to the US Air Force that was making the perimeter more and more square miles around the base of Area 51?
That's a very good question. It has actually it went into the hands of the Air Force. The Air Force uh, actually it took that land, and I am not sure at this moment what the compensation was, but it was very much lower than what the family wanted. And so that is the situation. The family of who owned that piece of land that overlooked Area 51. This family hasn't made any, public statement about the compensation that they received. But now, of course, that entire piece of the Groom mines that the family owned, and their relatives. That entire area is now in the hands of the U.S. Air Force. And so that's all I can say because the rest of the stuff about how much they received, it's very hard to get the information. But the fact is that basically their land was just taken away at a very low price. This is part of the Groom mines where the value of the property is much higher than what the Air Force said.
And sadly, that's typical. The federal government or any government, even local, city, state, taking for, say, a freeway or Air Force base, you're never going to get what you asked for. And forget about the meanings or the memories you've had in your home or ranch for decades. That doesn't mean anything. They just look at the market value and give it to you, even though market value is not what a real estate broker would be selling it for. But I'm going to switch this, going back to what you said, a very important point. Dulce. The fact that it has much more history than Area 51. Because from what I understand, is they didn't even start, doing anything at Area 51 until the U-2 program in the end of the 50s or early 60s, whereas it was before the Manhattan Project even begun was when they discovered the caverns in Dulce, right?
Well, that's partially true. The actual beginning, the realistic beginning of the alleged rumors about Dulce, New Mexico, actually started around 1967 when the United States government, through the Atomic Energy Commission, detonated an underground nuclear, bomb about a mile and a half underground near Dulce, New Mexico, about 22 miles southwest of Dulce, and that was 1967. But and that's when the Project Gas Buggy, that's the name of the project, Project Gas Buggy. The Atomic Energy Commission had a program after World War II to make the best use, the peaceful use of atomic energy, and so it was called Project Plowshare, bringing atomic energy to the peaceful world. So in 1967, under the guise of helping ease the flow of natural gas in the Dulce, New Mexico area, they did this strange experiment. They detonated this explosive nuclear material underground, and that is the beginning of the rumors about Dulce base. Now, folks like Anthony Sanchez claim that the Dulce area had a beginning earlier than even 1947, such as the around 1943 and the late 30s, but it's very difficult to come to any conclusive evidence for that. As far as I'm concerned, the beginnings of the Dulce rumor started around 1967 with the atomic detonation of this particular area, 22 miles southwest of Dulce, and some people started, getting affected by this, flow of actually radiation, which started leaking 10 years later. And so that was when I'm talking about the 1970s and the late 1970s, when strange mutilations of cow or cattle mutilations started around that area. And it's my contention that the government knew that they made a huge mistake by detonating this nuclear device on the ground, and they began to measure the radiation levels. They just couldn't go to the public and say that they made a mistake and that radiation has been leaking. They couldn't say that to the public, so they secretly, as far as I'm concerned, secretly started testing the level of radiation first by selecting certain animals, such as cows. And from beginning in the late 70s, they probably started picking up those cows, particular cows that they pre-marked in advance with fluorescent markings in the ranches in the Dulce area. And then they picked up those pre-marked cows, and they, with possibly by some kind of a helicopters or some kind of a remotely controlled platform, and they did some testing, and then after they did the testing, they put those animals back and they dropped it from helicopters or prototypes of unmanned aerial vehicles. And I'm talking about the late 1970s, and that's one of my theories. And I can say that national laboratories such as the Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque already had knowledge of UAVs at that time, remotely controlled platforms that was kind of silent. And so that's just my theory. But recently I wrote an article which is called the Dulce, New Mexico is not about aliens. It's about humans and the lingering problem that has been kept from the public. And this is about the health issues. This is a realistic issue that has been kept from the public. There's no question that the Dulce area has a high rate of cancer and a high rate of infertility among women. And this is part of the after effects of this strange 1967 underground nuclear explosion near Dulce. And this, I can verify that because I've talked to a lot of people in the Dulce who are suffering from cancer, including one of those former police chief or director of public safety. He has cancer. He admitted it recently. There are a lot of people who has cancer, and the problem with this is that this is going to be continued in the next generation and the generation after. And New Mexico is a great place, but there are a lot of people. We can go as far as 1945 when they had this nuclear explosion in the Trinity site of the New Mexico, the White Sands. There are still some Native American people who are still suffering from effects of radiation, and this is a fact.
Yes.
But that's just one aspect of the whole thing. But both Area 51 in Nevada and Dulce, New Mexico, to me, are the two most important aspects of UFO culture and beliefs right now at this time, and for good reason. And Area 51 has been associated with alien technology for many, many years. And, everybody associates Area 51 with alien technology and Dulce with underground alien
Wars,
base
right?
and so
Yeah.
on. But these are two subject matters that are so affecting the belief system of people who are into UFOs.
I would definitely have to agree with that. Especially talking about not just the alien base in Dulce, but also the fact of the alien war with humans. And all this can be found, this article, on your website. So I just want to spit it out for everybody. noriohayakawa.wordpress.net or is it .com? .net?
.com.
.com. With
Yes.
that being said, there's traffic coming in from, again, across the pond. So, Johnny Webb, what you got?
Well, we've got Karen in Leeds in Yorkshire in England on Facebook. She's asking Norio, when you talk about fracking, are you talking about breaking the firmaments? You talked about the Trinity tests. Does that represent breaking out through the water, nuclear bombs, and breaking into space with nuclear bombs?
Well, I'm just basically talking about the radiation effects of people that came in close contact with detonation, and there are quite a number of local people who lived near that area who are suffering from, even today, suffering from the after effects of radiation. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm also talking about the Los Alamos National Laboratory areas in northern New Mexico. Contrary to a lot of what people think, the effects of radiation is still going on even today. It's not
Right.
about 1945 or 1967. It's still going on today. And this is the biggest problem. The biggest problem in America is how to, prevent this thing that is happening. And this includes, by the way, that the various military projects, the so-called black budget programs that use a lot of dangerous toxic materials. And this is one of the biggest programs, headaches for America's Defense Department, how to get rid of the toxic substance, nuclear waste.
Yeah.
It's a big
Do you mean from Fukushima, Norio, sort of coming through on the undercurrents of the Pacific, coming towards the west coast of America? When you say these nuclear sort of environments, where do you suggest they're coming from?
Well, let me also throw in, too, when you mentioned survivors, there is still American doctors that go annually to Japan to check on the remaining survivors who are suffering from radiation poisoning from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I just wanted to throw that in there
absolutely
as you jump
true.
into Johnny's question.
Absolutely true. But this is a very, very interesting thing to let you know that there are many in the United States of America who are also have been suffering from the atomic tests in Nevada. In fact, there's an association in the United States
Thyroid.
of people who have been affected by the radiation, and a lot of people, of course, naturally, of those people live in Nevada as well as Utah and nearby states that are claiming that they haven't been compensated for their illness. It's definitely, from the radiation.
Johnny, what else did you have to ask? I know you had some more Facebook questions out there.
Well, for me, I think that earlier question, when she mentioned the word firmaments, always to me strikes a chord with flat earther people. And I wondered, what is your take on the flat earth theory in regard to I suppose the question was, breaking out of the firmaments above and below. What we had was, in the Trinity test that you mentioned earlier, that there was also those atoll type in the sea. They were blowing up underground the sea. And then they were blowing up in space later on. And obviously, you mentioned earlier that they were doing these big underground tests in Area 51 in these areas. But to bring in that all together as a collective, my understanding is that they were trying to break out of Earth with an understanding that there's a firmament above and a firmament below. Do you have any understanding of that? Have you followed any of these sort of recent Twitters that have come about talking in this language?
No, actually, I am not really versed on that topic. All I'm interested is in the awareness that these things are here, still, a big problem. And, I just can't, I'm not smart enough to go into that details of the effects. But
in the Bible, Norio, it mentioned that when God made the firmaments, separating the seas from the shores, there was a sort of certain setup, and apparently that's been broken with these tests in the Trinity tests, and apparently that's what's causing these big black waters of tsunamis to come in over the lands. What's your take on why we have tsunamis? It's not a new word. They had tsunamis in the sort of 1920s, but what do you make of a tsunami? What causes a tsunami?
Well, I really don't know what causes tsunamis. It's and earthquakes. It's something that it's still being studied, and
shifting in Earth's tectonic plates is one of the greatest things. For instance, if you have let's talk about the Sumerian flood, right? The tsunami there, right? What happened is the huge earthquake shifted the plates, and all of a sudden you have all this water. I mean, hundreds of millions of cubic meters of water, and just dumped, and all of a sudden this creates a ripple effect. At least that's the understanding I've got from myself and from speaking to people who do nothing but study earthquakes. We had a guest on not too long ago who wrote a book, Earthquake Storms. Former Caltech professor. He spent his whole life on earthquakes and volcanoes. But nonetheless, I want to go back to something you started the show with. 1947 was a very pivotal year. Not just because what your father saw, but because 1947 is the year of Roswell. And when you called in on the show with Robert Schaefer, you offered a different explanation that has been other than what has been proffered for the last 38 years, ever since Stanton Friedman found Jesse Marcel Jr. or Jesse Marcel Sr. and put him on camera. So can you tell us what was your thought of Roswell back when you first came to the States, when you first started looking at Area 51 Dulce, and then what made you change your mind, or what facts came in your life that made you look at it differently?
Oh yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, in 1978, I was very much hung up with the writings of John A. Keel and Dr. Jacques Vallée, who had brought up a very new perspective on this UFO phenomenon, namely that we may not be talking about actual physical entities from outer space visiting us, but more than that, they mentioned that this is probably something about some intelligent entities, non-physical, that are trying to manipulate our belief systems. And I came to the conclusion that so many things happened in 1947, not only Roswell, but things like the establishment of the CIA, which took place in 1947, the establishment of the Air Force, 1947, the establishment of the National Security Agency through the National Security Act. This started exactly in 1947. Big defense groups such as the Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque started in 1947 suddenly. And in Albuquerque, the underground sensitive installation called Manzano Base started in 1947, the construction. And also, we have to, bear in mind that 1947 was, at that time, there were, in my opinion, many interesting tests conducted in American Southwest. In fact, these tests began to be conducted immediately after World War II, 1945, when hundreds and hundreds of German scientists and engineers came to the U.S.
Project Paperclip, that's right.
That's right. And it's my opinion that the United States military, and not the Soviet Union, which acquired the bulk of German, prototype experimental craft, such as the crescent-shaped flying wing aircraft, and they began to test these in addition to rockets. Of course, the Germans played a major role in the development of American rocketry in 1945, 1946, 1947. But in addition to rocketry, it's my opinion that the United States military had acquired some of the crescent-shaped flying wing aircraft, including probably some improved versions of Horten 229. Now, Horten 229 was a German experimental prototype craft that was tested in 1943 in Germany and had a ramjet engine and could go about 500 miles per hour. But there was a disinformation about this thing when Annie Jacobson came out with this book, Area 51, in which she just distractedly, quoted from an unnamed EG&G employee who told her that it was the Soviet Union that had this German Horten 229, and it was the Soviet Russia that flew that and crashed it in the New Mexico desert in 1947. But I believe that was a disinformation. I believe that rather than the Soviet Union, of course, the Soviet Union did acquire, through their own version of paperclip, many German scientists and engineers.
Yes.
But it was the United States military that acquired more of those items, including the Horten 229, and improved them. And then they began to test these as well in New Mexico. That's just my belief. And more than that, this Roswell incident was a very strange incident, no question about that. It's my speculation that an accidental crash of this thing in New Mexico in 1947 may have necessitated the creation of convenient cover stories or staged events. But these staged events may have been conveniently promoted later on by some kind of a manipulative force or intelligence, which could be human or non-human type of consciousness, to bring about an agenda or some type of a gradual conditioning of belief systems programmed for future possible unknown scenarios. Now, this sounds like what Dr. Jacques Vallée has been saying. And I partially agree with Dr. Jacques Vallée in that this is some kind of a programming or conditioning system, to us from 1947 to right now sounds like a many long years, but actually it could be just a few seconds in space-time.
That's right.
So it's a very interesting take. And as I said, it could be a human or non-human type of consciousness that could be moving us into this direction. But that's just my personal thing. But nevertheless, the concept of Area 51 as a definite alien technological center and the concept of the alleged Dulce base as an alien U.S. cooperated biological laboratory underground, these two concepts are definitely fueling these kind of speculations. And as far as I'm concerned, to tell you the truth, I have not seen any hard, solid, concrete, physical, tangible, as well as irrefutable documentary evidence whatsoever that there's a physical underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. But this concept has been manipulated by some force and has been brought out as part of a conditioning system.
And let's not forget that CIA lies, disinformation, discrediting, and not only is this apparent from Freedom of Information Act documents, I've spoken to a few CIA officers, not to mention, the federal officers in my family that tell me the same things. So I definitely agree with you. Now let's just make this more fun. This last Contact in the Desert, the large event here in Southern California, there was a big split. Half the ufologists were talking about these new giant big birds, blue big birds. They called them the blue avians that were really in control of this. But it pissed off people like Graham Hancock and Eric Von Däniken for a good reason. Me, I hate to say it, if anybody out there is, big fan of blue avians or, Sesame Street's Big Bird, I don't see any proof or how someone could have taken Big Bird, dyed him blue, and say, oh, this is what's really controlling our planet.
Well, all I can say is that one can say all he or she can about UFOs and aliens, but the only ultimate proof to me would be nothing other than a landing of an actual physical craft in a public venue.
And meeting the pilots, too. I always
That's right. That. Occupants included in front of the scientists and engineers and in front of a live television simulcast, a global simulcast. Until that happens, we can speculate about all these things, but, it's just endless. And that's my philosophy as far as this whole thing is concerned. I keep an open mind, even though I tend to be skeptical about the aliens on Earth now. I'm kind of a skeptical in that, but I try to keep my mind open mind, which is very important because we just don't know enough about this world we're living in. And everything that we can see is not all to this.
That's right. And skepticism is healthy, and having an open mind is healthy. It's just the balance of the two. To believe anything you read or are told, then the people who are telling it are laughing their way to the bank. And I've seen this time and time again. Anyhow, we got a lot of chatter globally, so for those people who are literally up in the wee early morning times in around Europe, I'm going to pass over to Johnny to ask the European questions. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I've got one from Hubris, I think you pronounce it, from Norway. And he asked Norio, the Japanese jumped in 1945 from a nuked environment to a high-end semiconductor microtechnology of today. How did it come about?
Well, it came about, as far as I'm concerned, through hard work. That's all I can say. Realistically, yes, both Japan and Germany, thanks to the program known as the Marshall Plan, were lucky enough to develop their technologies and so on after World War II through Marshall Plan, and it's just amazing the state of art of technology in Japan right now. Anywhere from laser optics technology to 3D, all kinds of illumination technology and so on. And I'm interested in the events that are taking place in the world today. In fact, my wife and I just came back from a 5-week trip, memorable trip to Southern Europe about a month and a half ago. And we learned so much about what's happening in Europe. We visited Italy, southern France, Spain, and Portugal. We met a lot of people. We walked the streets. We took local buses, local trains. We met a lot of people, including some who were actually researchers about the paranormal. In fact, when we went to France, we talked to one scientist actually that used to live in New Mexico in 1988. But anyway, in Spain, we got together with an author who wrote about Area 51. He was a friend of mine. He is a friend of mine. And then in Spain, in a place called Jaén, we got together with their internet talk host. His name is Juan Langkamp. He has a conspiracy talk program in Spain, and we learned so much from this trip to Southern Europe, especially how Europe is just changing so quickly. And my wife used to travel alone as, in 40 years ago to Europe alone. And she was just astonished to see the change in Europe. She didn't recognize Europe as Europe after we went to this trip, a month and a half ago. Especially when we went to Italy, we just saw so many folks that were actually, from the places like Iraq and, Iran and, Middle East and so on. And, I think Europe is just changing so quickly. And this is part of some kind of a thing that is awakening us to what's taking place. And, I predicted that one of these days, slowly but surely, the European Union could go into a different direction.
It's interesting you say that, Norio, because England has just voted that they don't recognise Europe the same way they did in the past, and we voted out of the European Union. But we've just got under 10 minutes left. So, is there anything more that we need to ask you? Is there anything we haven't brought up that you'd like us to talk about?
I have more, but hold on. Wasn't there another question right there that you got there from England, Johnny? I wanted you to read that first before I continue with what I was going to ask.
Well, I got one from Stavros in Tripoli in Greece. I
Even
didn't know if it was relevant, but he asked, was Norio or his father ever in an American internment camp? And if he was, what was it like? But I don't know if that's relevant.
Yeah, it's relevant, definitely relevant. I actually became a U.S. citizen in 1976. So, because I was born in Japan, but I know a lot of persons of Japanese Americans who were interned in various camps in the United States. It was a very sad situation, but as far as I'm concerned, it was symbolically rectified when President Reagan took a bold step to acknowledge the incarceration of Japanese Americans. When Reagan became president, he took time and he finally acknowledged this very sad part of history, and he actually, he actually compensated every person of Japanese American extraction, compensated $20,000 each, and at least he did something that was very positive.
And prior to that, there were even Japanese American soldiers, working or serving the United States, and then to hear that their families were interned was just saddening, to say the least.
Yes, that's right. In fact, there were so many Japanese American soldiers who went to Italy and fought, for America, and many of them were killed, and many of them received so many, medals of honor. And so I have a deep respect to these persons that really cared for America and chose America as their, primary, country, and fought till death to preserve America.
Now, I'm going to go back, since we're running out of time, unless there's anything you want to take control of. By all means, if you feel there's something that we haven't mentioned that needs to be spoken about, by all means mention it. I'm going to go back again to Dulce, because you wrote the preface or foreword for Anthony Sanchez's book, but years later, it's different. And what you're saying is different. And not just that, a lot of people who have read the book are frustrated that they can't corroborate it. Even Anthony Sanchez, when he was on the show, admitted for himself that the moment the book was published, the kernel was gone. Well, how does that help us? It doesn't.
Well, it doesn't help us. I cannot put down Anthony Sanchez's interesting book. It was a very significant book because it brought some kind of a psychological aspect of beliefs of a part of a population, namely the belief that there's an alien underground base there, and it produced a lot of commotion. But again, the bottom line is that even Anthony Sanchez doesn't have a definite, conclusive, tangible evidence of this underground base. But the topic is so important, not from a realistic viewpoint, but from a psychological aspect. The Dulce is really, as well as Area 51, it's a social, psychological, cultural phenomenon. It has become a cultural phenomenon among, not only among a segment of the population, the UFO community, but increasingly it's part of the Americana, the American culture. Especially these days, the American culture has a tremendous fascination with conspiracies, and it's important part of Americana at this moment.
Johnny, I know you got something before time runs out. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, we got Tom in Ipswich in England, and he asked Norio, can you tell us anything about Area 6, the drone base? Is it spying on Americans?
It's very important. Area 6 is Yucca Dry Lake. It's about 40 miles southwest of Area 51, but it's the drone central, but Area 6, the Yucca base area, they don't really tell us. Other than that, they are doing lots of experiments with UAVs and new generation of UAVs. We can't, go too much into it because we don't know much about it, but there's definitely the UAV Central, and one of the problems is that we are becoming a nation that has no privacy because of things like this kind of technology.
If I could just jump in, sorry, Dr. J, I just wanted to ask Norio, because when I was young, I remember reading books about the American government using Cadillacs to drive around California and spraying these chemicals on their own citizens. And then in the New York subway, they had a train that they used to use, and it sprayed citizens. I was wondering, do you think that they're using this drone base, like you say, for this sort of activity to be sort of crop spraying the community? What's going on with the drones? Are they just training for work abroad in Kandahar and places like that, or do you think that these are being used in our own environment, in America's own society?
Oh, actually, it's a fact that drones are now increasingly being used by the American, not only the military, but local, police departments, the FBI, you name it. But to say that drones are causing, damage to the citizens, it's very difficult to say. And because I don't want to go into deep end of conspiracy theories, because I am interested in conspiracy theories not because I believe in them, but because I believe that the belief in conspiracy theories is becoming a very important aspect of the American culture. And who knows, those actual conspiracies may actually being manipulated by somebody or some force, So that's all I can say without going deep into the conspiracy theories themselves.
I got something here. Sarah from South Beach, Florida. What do you think of the NSA monitoring us? Hashtag end of privacy.
Oh, there's no question about it. NSA just built about 3 years ago a huge complex in Utah called the Bluffdale NSA Data Facility. It's a humongous, the central data collecting organization operated by NSA. Yes, they have to, unfortunately, spy on us, and for some good reasons. And some reasons it's understandable, but there's always the danger that it can go, to the extreme. But I don't say that NSA is doing terrible damage or things like that, because I can't be judgmental. Some things are necessary, and what's necessary is that we are actually living in a society, like it or not, where there's no privacy.
Here's one more thing. This is Mark from Kalamazoo, Michigan. What do you know of Echelon, NSA base in United Kingdom? I guess Johnny would be close to that, but this is posed to you, Norio.
Oh yeah, there are many Echelon bases, not only in the United States, but in places like Australia, England, and other countries. That's part of the listening posts that has become a necessity to monitor the movement, such as the terrorism and all that kind of stuff. And so, like I said, like it or not, we are living in this kind of a society, and it's up to us to see if these things should, be focused on positive effects on the public, rather than negative enslaving effects. So I try to stay neutral on this, because I'm a person that tries to stay, to have 2 feet on the ground as we investigate all these things.
Agreed. With that being said, Norio, we have reached the end of the hour. If I could ask you just to hang by after we get off air. I wanted to ask you, first of all, everybody make sure you check out his website. First of all, you could see the link on our website, which is drjradiolive.com, which will take you to noriohayakawa.wordpress.com. With that being said, if you have one final statement to say to everybody out there globally, believers, skeptics, and people on the fence, on any topic, what would you have to say?
Well, all I have to say is that I came to the decision that the best way to communicate things is through creation of a news service kind of thing. And this is the reason why I created this my website. It's called the Citizens Oversight Committee on Government Accountability. And I have interesting items that could very be helpful to people because I take a neutral stand on all things and I don't try to go off tangent. And some of the articles in my website, noriohayakawa.wordpress.com, is it's very enlightening because I take articles from that somebody wrote as well as my own articles, and these are all articles reality based. It's not imagination, it's reality based, and that's what this website is all about.
And everybody, I do urge you to check it out. There are some awesome articles. I've read, I think, the most recent 12 or so, and they pretty much cover, lots of different topics that everybody out there is interested. With that being said, don't forget you are listening to Dr. J Radio Live. Remember to check us out on every social media account, from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Google+, Pinterest, things I don't even know. There's just an account with the same name. That happens to be the name of the show, DRJ Radio Live. And most importantly, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel where this show will be archived for everyone to hear, and also with a lot of footage donated by Jaime Masan as eye candy. I also want to thank Angel Espino in New York for broadcasting this show on PSN Radio Network, Ira Robinson, as well as Michael Vara from Late Night in the Midlands, also taken Dr. J Radio Live, and more listeners that we've already reached, and all the way in the United Kingdom, thanks to Johnny Webb hooking us up with JC of Deprogrammed Radio Network, where locals can hear it at a normal time. So if you didn't catch if you're catching this at the end, don't worry, you will get to hear it from the beginning as soon as it's over on the other networks, and then again the best of shows, and on top of that when it's archived. I want to thank, first of all, my guest, Norio Hayakawa. Thank you so much for staying on, and please continue to stay on for a couple more moments. And I want to thank my team, everybody who's doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make this show happen. My heart really goes out to you, and thanks you all, especially Johnny Webb. He's not just here on air with me live for 1 to 2 hours per night, but you guys got to remember, we spend a lot more time before and after the show, and not just that. We're talking about every single day of the week, and Johnny does a lot of great, amazing work, so I got to thank him for all that. And the most important people that need to be thanked are you, the listener, whether you be in California, Utah, New Mexico, Florida, New York, UK, Norway, Greece, Russia, Indonesia, Hawaii, wherever you may be, Japan. We want to thank you for joining us. With that being said, this is Dr. J, and I am officially signing off.